Okay, thanks for joining. On this video, we're going to talk about temporary buy downs. We're going to define what a temporary buy down is. We're going to show you how it works and who's paying for all this and what it means to your loan. And then we're going to go through and finish with the different program options or the variables that are available with a temporary buy down. So what is a temporary buy down? By definition is just like its name. It is a temporary reduction of your interest rate for a fixed amount of time. So we did a video earlier on a 1-0 buy down or a 1-0 buy down. So what this does is a very simple explanation. Let's say if you got into a loan and your interest rate was going to be at 6.5%, and we were able to apply a 1-0 buy down option to that, then your interest rate for the first year would actually be 1% lower. That would give you a start rate on your 30-year fixed loan at 5.5% for that first 12 months of payments. It's a great little way to maybe take some contributions from a seller or a lender and help with that affordability, because that seems to be the biggest catch-all right now that's keeping a lot of people from moving forward is really the affordability. They may qualify for that payment, but they just don't feel like they could handle that payment. So temporary buy downs are a great way to kind of help with that type of issue in a short term, because again, it's a temporary buy down. So how do these work? So what a temporary buy down is, it's a prepayment of interest on that loan. So a 1-0 buy down is very popular because it's one of the least expensive, one that a lender could actually help pay for in that process. So what that payment does, or that charge does, is it takes those funds and it prepays the interest on your 30-year fixed loan. So in that same example, at 6.5%, we're gonna prepay some of those that interest for 12 months, so you can actually have a start rate at 5.5%. Now the buyer cannot pay for any type of temporary buy down because it's a prepayment of interest, so they don't want you prepaying your own interest. So it would come from the lender or the seller. So the 1-0 is most popular because it has the additional option where a lender could actually help pay for that. Later in this video, I will show you a little bit more about the cost breakdown and what those potentially could cost in today's interest rates, so you know how to negotiate that with any kind of contract that you may be into. So there are options that are available with a temporary buy down. Now, one of the most popular because of the cost associated with it is the 1-0 buy down. So that means on that one, you're going to get a 1% interest rate for the first 12 months lower, and then it would graduate to whatever you would qualified or originally had been pre-approved for on your mortgage. Now there's also what is called a 1-1 buy down. So what that does is it takes it 1% lower for the first 24 months. So 1-1 means you would have 1% lower in the first 12 months, 1% lower in the next 12 months, and then it would graduate back up to that original note again. There's also something called a 2-1 buy down. Now what a 2-1 buy down is going to do is it's going to drop that interest rate by 2%. So in our example, at 6.5%, if that's where you had been qualified at, you would actually have a start rate at 4.5%. For the first 12 months. It would then graduate to 5.5% for the next 12 months, and then would finish in that third year at what your original note rate was. And then there is the last option, which is called a 3-2-1 buy down. So this means that you would be, the first year, you would be 3% below market rate. Now, again, with that example of the 6.5%, you would have a start rate at 3.5% for the first 12 months. The next 12 months would graduate by 1% to 4.5%. And then the third year, you would be at 5.5%. And after that third year, going into the very beginning of the fourth year, you would graduate back up to that 6.5% where your original note rate was. So there are different costs that are involved on this as well. So a 1-0 buy down is traditionally going to cost you somewhere around about 7/8 or 0.875% of a discount. Now that's based on today's market. This can fluctuate a little bit because it is a prepayment of interest. So it depends on where interest rates are that you're buying down from, could have some small fluctuations to that. So for a 1-1 buy down, the cost is going to go up a little bit. It's going to be almost double. It's going to be 1.5% to buy down that for that 1-1 period. Now, the next one is the 2-1 buy down. Now, this cost is going to go up to about 2.375% of the loan amount to buy down those funds for that 2 year and that 1 year. Because remember, we're prepaying interest for that time period. So it's going to cost more to do that. And last but not least is the 3-2-1 buy down. Now, that's going to cost about 4.5% or 4.5% of the loan amount to buy down those interest rates for that period of time. Now, as we get into the cost of this with the 1-1, the 2-1, and the 3-2-1 buy down, typically those are going to be funds that you're probably going to need to request from the seller. So right now, sellers are a little bit more apt to be negotiable and contributing seller contributions towards a transaction. So we have to use the seller's funds to buy those down. Lender's probably not going to have enough weight to be able to build in anywhere from 1.5% to 4.5% in a contribution, and typically it's going to have to come from the seller in your negotiations. So what we typically see is people offering maybe full list price on the home, but they're asking for these contributions. Now, on a conventional loan, the maximum that a seller can really contribute is going to be around the 3% mark when you're putting less than 10% down. FHA is where we do most of these loans, and they will allow up to a 6% seller contribution, which could help you with that 3-2-1 buy down if you're able to negotiate those items through. It's all part of that process, but learning and knowing what some of these affordability practices are just some creative ways to kind of manage this affordability problem for a short term. And then we are also anticipating some downturn in the market where interest rates will come lower, and you can take advantage of that when those come. And if there's any prepaid interest left, that just comes off as a principal reduction.